Good morning, Year 8. Welcome back to another week of remote learning. We're carrying on with the travel writing module today. We're going to be doing some sensory writing involving the senses, which leads us straight into this do now. Write down the 5 senses in your book, sight, hearing, smell. Write down the 5 senses in your book, and then write down 1 or 2 words next to each one to describe the room you are in, like the room I'm sitting in. I can see lots of books, old furniture, my cat. So if we were thinking of sight, we could talk about those things. I can hear my daughter's in the bath. I can hear a bit of splashing. So those types of things that in the room that you're in that relate directly to the 5 senses. Today, our learning objective is to write clearly using the 5 senses to create a description. The title is Sensory Writing Using the 5 Senses. So write that into your books and then go on to the next slide. Right, so listening to the sound of the wind, how could you describe this sound? Now there is a link on there if you're watching this on PowerPoint, so you can listen to some wind blowing, but if you're watching the video or got the PDF or looking on YouTube, just imagine the wind blowing and think of an interesting verb for the wind blowing. Howlingly, an interesting adjective, an interesting personification, and then either a metaphor or a simile. I won't run through them all for you there because I'll just be giving them to you. So do that and then write them into your books, and I'll give you 8 minutes to do that, and then we're on to the next slide. Here are some interesting verbs, adverbs, adjectives and nouns that you can use. You can come back to this slide later in the lesson and use any of those, so don't feel that you can't. A metaphor for the wind, for example, the wind was a savage beast that night. As we all know, a metaphor is when you describe something by saying it is something else. Simile is when you say it's like something else. So simile for the wind is the wind cut like a freshly sharpened knife. Like makes it a simile, and then the personification would be the wind cried out hungrily. So you don't need to write anything down there, but you will have to, I imagine, come back to this slide in a bit. So just read that and then on to the next slide. So again, there is a link on this slide for some sounds of the city. But if you can't get that, don't worry. You can imagine things like police sirens, the people shouting, perhaps the sound of construction. And I want you to write phrases describing what you can hear, and then describe what you imagine you'd be able to see. So we've got a little view of the city there, so you can just describe that. But I also want you to describe what you can hear. And then what would you feel if you were in that picture there? And by that I mean you would feel the rain on you. You might feel cold. You might feel those police sirens were very loud. You might be able to taste the pollution in the air. All those sorts of things. And then I want you to do the extension actually. Write either a metaphor, simile or personification describing what you can taste. I'll give you 10 minutes to do that. And now just taking that and running with it slightly. This is the same picture of the same city. Just describe what you can feel. Now I don't mean emotionally, I mean what you can feel physically. If you've got thin shoes on the cold wet pavement coming through the soles of your feet, the piercing sirens, the sound of feet sort of splashing through the water, possibly an aircraft going overhead. Write a little paragraph. The reason for this is that you do descriptive writing at GCSE. So it's like, imagine it's like doing a sketch in words with your feelings. Okay, so just a short paragraph, 5 or 6 lines there. I'll give you 8 minutes to do that, then on to the next slide. Now I want you to use the 5 senses that we've talked about through the rest of the lesson, the previous parts of the lesson rather, to create one paragraph around this picture. Could be in any country, it could be in Spain, could be Australia, it could be in England, it could be any place. You must write as though recalling a visit to it. So you're coming back to this place after having been away for a while. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you touch? And I want all of that to be written into a descriptive paragraph. And remember what I said, it's like a sketch with your sentences. So there's no story to be told here. You're simply describing using your senses. And I would really like to see some of this work, Year 8. So I'll put the email address on class charts and look forward to having a look at some of this work and giving you feedback on it. I shall speak to you tomorrow.